Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Scooby-Doo the board game from Command Games. Command Games, which is definitely not pronounced Simon, as a clear and popular consensus similar to the GIF word. But with that said, Scooby-Doo is basically a cooperative experience. It's a cooperative experience in which the players are going to be working together to take down the monsters. You're going to have a monster over here, and it's worth noting I have the pre-painted deluxe copy of the game, so some things about this copy might be different than what you have access to, but past that, in wherever the game version you have is, you're trying to take down one of several possible monsters. You're going to have a stack full of monsters, and you can choose which one you're facing off against, which will give you a slight difference to how you experience the game. In the game, what you're trying to do is you're trying to go ahead and capture the monster. You're going to do that by building out these traps over here. Currently, I have set up the more difficult traps, but the game does scale in difficulty, allowing you to have easy, medium, or hard traps, or possibly even mixing and matching for really fine-tuning that experience to give you the exact difficulty you want to experience. You're trying to therefore collect tokens to place on these traps. You can see over here, various locations around the board are going to give you tokens you can place on these traps, and you can do that by gathering tokens at locations, then heading to the swamps and general store where you can place tokens you've gathered on your player board onto the traps and hopefully do that before the monster scares everyone away from the park and wins the game. Not really a park so much, but either way, what you're going to be doing on your turn in order to achieve these goals is you're going to be going ahead and starting with drawing 2 cards over here. Every player is going to draw 2 cards, and they're going to select one of these cards. And cards you'll see here have one of 3 different things on them. They have an initiative value which determines how fast you go. That's important because you don't know how fast the monster's going, and you also don't even know how fast your teammates are going as you play these cards. It's also going to have a movement speed. In this case, both these cards are 0 to 1. And then lastly, it'll have an ability, the ability being defining something extra you can do when you play a card. So each player is going to go ahead and look at these cards and select one card. For the sake of showing you how this plays, I'm just going to deal cards to all the characters over here. Let's go ahead and just deal 4 cards, but normally there'd be some degree of agency as you went through this experience. When you're done with that, when you reveal the cards, you're also going to reveal the monster initiative, and that's going to be where the monster is going. And so we can see right now, ooh, look at that, that was beautiful, in order. We're going to have Shaggy going, then Daphne going, then Scooby-Doo going, then we're going to have Velma go, and finally we're going to have, then we're going to have the monster go, and finally Velma go because of that initiative order. So we're going to start with Shaggy. Shaggy's going to move 0 to 1. Shaggy's over here. Now you can't have more than one person in a spot unless you are on the Mystery Machine or in the Swamps and General Store where you can have 2 players occupying that area, and that's going to be part of the management puzzle of the game, trying to ensure you get what you need done without cramping the various spots on the board. Now Shaggy could go 0 to 1, which means he could stay where he is, but in this case we're going to go ahead and wander down here. In general, you can move across these dotted lines. You cannot cross these red lines. Shaggy's going to move 0 to 1 and gather 2 of these green tokens, putting them on the player board where you can store up to 6 tokens before heading to the general store. Then we'll have Daphne go because she's next in turn order. That really was beautiful the way that dealt over there. We're going to have Daphne go ahead and move, and Daphne's actually going to stay where she is. And this is where you actually want to look what the monster's doing. We can see the monster is going to be moving 3 along green arrows. So going 1, 2, 3. That means currently Shaggy and Velma are both in trouble, and you want to be mindful of that. And so you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to have Shaggy, you're going to have Daphne stay where she is, and she's going to gather 2 blue tokens, because blue tokens are going to help us get a bunch of these traps require extra blues, so we want to get as many of those as possible. Then we're going to go ahead and have Scooby-Doo act. Scooby-Doo's going to move out of the monster's way. You can pass through other characters, but you cannot enter their zone, and to that end, we're going to go ahead and actually have Shaggy go down here. So we're going to have Shaggy, Scooby-Doo go down there, and take a red and a blue token. And then finally the monster's going to go, and not really finally, we still have Velma going, but we're going to go ahead and have the monster go, and the monster's going to go 1, 2, 3. Now because the monster has this symbol on it, it means we do have to look at the monster ability. The main area the monsters are different is in their monster ability and the way they interact with the game state when you have those symbols on the cards. And to that end, we're going to draw a bunch of these monster tokens, and the Ghost Clown adds 1 monster token to an empty visitor token slot in each location he enters. There can only be 1 monster token per location. So when the monster moves, you're going to be actually removing tokens from these locations. It's going to be one of the ways you lose by having too many haunted locations. When you empty these locations, you're eventually going to put haunted location tokens out, and if you have too many of them, then you lose the game. And yes, you can unhaunt a location, but it requires a bit more work than otherwise repopulating visitors. So we're going to go ahead and add these tokens, and these tokens will have to be removed before we can actually go ahead and remove a haunted token. So it's going to give us an additional thing in the way. Additionally, he ended it in Velma's space over here, which is going to cause fright to occur. When you have fright occur in the game, you're going to take 2 cards from the top of the draw deck and place them into the discard deck over here. So you're going to go ahead and add those there. It's also worth noting, by the way, whenever you choose cards, the cards you don't choose, so the 4 cards that were not chosen, would currently be in the save deck, which is relevant because these will be automatically shuffled back in, versus these you have to work to get your way way back into the recover over here. So we're going to have Velma over here frighten because the monster went there. And then finally it's going to be Velma's turn, where Velma can go ahead and move on her turn. She can move 0 to 3, and she kind of wants to go, you know what, she actually wants to get the blue plus green. So 1, 2, it's not going to be enough. 1, 2, I think we're just going to, I don't know, we're just going to go over here. You know what? We can actually have 2 characters where the van is. So let's go ahead and have move over here and gather another red plus blue on her board. That's the basic sequence of play. On your turn, you're going to go ahead and choose one of 2 movement cards that are going to define your initiative, your movement, and any possible abilities. You're also going to have the monster moving around the board as well, slowly frightening visitors, as well as possibly frightening yourself, and you need to be mindful of a few possible loose conditions, including the deck running out, including too many locations being haunted, and so you're trying to manage all of those things. Meanwhile, as you wander around the board, you're doing different things from collecting tokens, which at first seems pretty easy because, well, you can just collect tokens. But as these locations lose visitors, you're going to want to go to locations that restore visitors to the board, so you can see various locations that restore visitors, and also remove the monster tokens from the board, which will be essential to getting your plans in order. So you're trying to do a bunch of things. You're trying to be mindful of the visitors running out, the fright tokens running out, which is another lose condition. You only have 5 of these tokens, and when you run out of the last one, you're going to go ahead and lose the game as well, so you need to be mindful of that. And then you're also trying to go ahead and add cards back to the deck. When you go to certain locations, like for instance over here, you can add 2 cards from the discard deck to the save deck, where it'll be shuffled back into your main deck as you go. When you go to the Swamp's End General Store, you can go ahead and commit your tokens to a specific area, to a specific trap over here. So you go to commit those, and if you're playing on hard mode, when you eventually complete a trap, it actually adds a condition to the game that makes it harder for you to win. So as you're playing in hard mode, not only are the traps requiring more tokens, but they're putting things in your way as you try to accomplish them when you play through the game. That is basically Scooby-Doo the board game. On your turn, draw a card, take an action, be mindful of the various triggers of endgame while trying to collect tokens to put towards the trap, and ultimately try to win the game. We have not talked about a few small details. We have not talked about the mystery machine, the fact that 3 times in the game you can discard a fuel token from the mystery machine, which I didn't actually put them out over here, but you have fuel tokens on the mystery machine. You can discard those to move the mystery machine anywhere you want on the board with the characters in it. You also have players that are also going to have their ability slot where they can give in their one-time use ability to activate their ability in the game, and that is basically Scooby-Doo the board game from Come On, definitely Come On Games. With that, let's go ahead and dive into the review, starting off with ease of play. The rulebook is fairly easy to go through. It's fairly procedural, very well explained, great, very short, to the point, all that stuff. Got a great rule summary in the back over here. If at any point you forget the core turn order, all of that is clearly there in the back of the rulebook. Very easy to dive into, fairly easy to understand, a few small details to get right, but nothing that complicated. Very much a entry-level cooperative experience with a lot of theme and some deluxification in your game. Games tend to run around 60 minutes, I'd say. It could run a little faster, but generally, I'd say I'm also biased because this is a game where I'd say more of my plays have been, I played this solo, I've played this with full-on like adult gamers, and I've played this with my kids as well. More of my plays have been with my kids though, and those run a little longer, I'd say, so maybe around an hour. Box says 30 minutes. I'd imagine that's appropriate if you're playing this quickly enough. 30 minutes seems a bit fast. I don't know if I've ever done this in 30 minutes, but I'd say 45 with a regular situation, and probably closer to 60 with kids. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, there's a bunch of things to like about this game. This game is thematically, the game's charming to begin with. But aside from the production value, the art's great, the production value is great. These pre-painted miniatures, if you have those are great as well for sure. This focuses, let's show, there we go. But past that, in general, the game really delivers on the theme. It feels like you're kind of trying to stop the monster as you go. I feel this is a perfect implementation of theme to board game, and it really does deliver on that well, while also giving you a variety of monsters that all plug and play into that core system. We have a bunch of monsters here, and all of them just have a small ability in the way that differentiates them, and I'd say some of them feel more differently than others. Like for instance, when you're fighting against the Ghost of Redbeard, that really changes things up because his tokens are kind of marching around the board, chasing you around. You have a bunch of different abilities here. I have not played as all of them against all of them yet, but I'd say some of them are small little details that won't significantly change your experience, and others will definitely feel like you're facing off against an entirely different monster, even while using the same basic construct of play. And so it's really does a good job with the theme, gives you good variety of the various monsters you're fighting against. Characters all have their own ability as well. I find that less of a game changer because it's a one-time use ability in the game. It doesn't majorly change the experience, but of course thematically, who doesn't want to have Scooby-Doo or ideally Scrappy-Doo in your game as you play through it? The game is also simple and to the point. This does not overcomplicate itself, which is a good thing considering the target market for this game. This inherently is going to be leaning into a Scooby-Doo fan and possibly a board gamer fan as well, or the overlap of those two genres, but as a game that's going to be marketed towards a bunch of people who may not have board games as their, major go-to, I think the game does a good job of giving you a game that is rewarding, simple, to the point, while also giving you enough variety from what your typical gaming experience is, that it does feel like something different. It feels very similar to a classic Pandemic style game, while also having some small differences. Even things like the communication of drawing 2 cards, of trying to turn order, of having that, ooh, I'm going to go early in the round, but not exactly telling people what you're going to do. It gives you that sense of collaboration and teamwork, and also just uncertainty, as you cannot perfectly predict what the monster will do, although sometimes you can actually look at their cards. And so that lack of certainty really feeds into where this game is trying to be. The mystery van is a fun little addition as well, and it can be incredibly useful. First of all, it's adorable to have on your board, but it's also useful to use that a few times across the course of the game to really get yourself out of an otherwise tight pickle in the game. And so overall, the full picture of everything in this game. Oh, and the traps. I love the difficulty modifications. The difficulty scaling in this game is a good thing. The fact that you can play this game on an incredibly easy difficulty that makes the game so easy to beat that if you lose, it is frankly embarrassing, versus the fact that you can play this on medium or as hard as you possibly want by adding more traps than the game suggests even, or just having them all be difficult traps. You can really scale this game to the difficulty level you are looking for and give yourself a much more strongly negative experience. Not negative in a bad way, but negative in a punishing way. So you really have the difficulty adjustments to the game, which I appreciate having, especially considering where this game lies. Again, you can play it incredibly on the easy side or incredibly on the hard side or somewhere in the middle. As far as things I don't like in the game, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of that general communication puzzle of I'm going to go early but not saying exactly what to do. It's a system that's been used in Gloomhaven, it's been used over here, it's been used in a dozen other games, and I've never been a huge fan of that kind of wishy-washy vague communication. I find it usually lends to people trying to find ways to break the rules, and so then almost why have them when they are very vague. Past that, I'd say as well, is that the whole board over here can be a little hard to see everything going on as you're playing through it. It's not the easiest to track exactly what's going on, even where the monsters are moving, and at times it can feel like you're just getting in each other's way, especially at larger player counts. When you're playing it at 4 or 5 players, it gets harder and harder to find a safe spot on the board, not for lack of strategy, but just because the board's kind of the same whether you're playing with 3 characters, 4 characters, or 5 characters. It just gets harder at those player counts, which I guess you can consider a form of difficulty modification to adjust around. And then past that, I'd say it is a lighter experience. Understand that walking in, this is definitely a lighter cooperative experience. If you're looking for some incredibly intricate cooperative puzzle, this is not that game. And that does affect my enjoyment of it. I think this is a good, useful, let's get to my own thoughts and final thoughts. But yeah, it's a lighter experience, which for me does take away from how much I enjoy it. As far as what I can see others not liking, a few small things. It does fall a little bit into the zone where it's a little bit more complicated of a game than kids can run on their own, while possibly not being complicated enough to be rewarding to like heavy strategy gamers. It's in a slightly weird zone. I think it's generally very accessible, but it's not necessarily something I'd recommend as your first board game either. I think there's just enough extra strategy going on, extra things to manage, the communication, the ordering, the various differences in the beast over here, the traps you're facing off, the movement on the board, the different options you can take. It is a step up from being incredibly accessible, while a step down from being, heavy strategy. So it's going to have a slight finding your right audience over there. Also, I'd say that the solo play is not the cleanest. This is a game which it does have a solo puzzle. I've played through it. I find the things it does to try to minimize from having the perfect information, it's not the cleanest solo puzzle. For myself, I would say that the solo play is fine, not where I'd strongly recommend the game. As far as final thoughts on Scooby-Doo the board game, overall, I enjoyed the game. Overall, Scooby-Doo the board game gives you a very, again, production quality off the charts, matching to the theme, great job there, and that lightness that is, again, appropriate for theme, all across the board, great job. It is a game that's on the lighter side for me. This is not a game I'm pulling out unless my kids ask for it, because it's lighter than the typical cooperative puzzle I'm looking for. I like something that has a lot more bite to just how much is going on as I try to think through my strategies, and I like to feel like the game is crushing down around me, and you don't strongly get that feeling from this game. Even when you lose, it can kind of sneak up on you a little bit, and not feel like you're facing an uphill battle the entire time. And so there is that weird zone it falls, not weird zone, just a more gateway zone the game falls into, as opposed to for myself. For me, it's a 3.5 out of 5. I like what Scooby-Doo the board game is doing, and I think it is very appealing and fun to go through. It's just not the thing that I'm personally pulling off the shelf when I'm looking for a cooperative experience to go for. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Horrified. A game that's going to feel similar in terms of the general vibe it gives. Horrified from Funko Games, I believe from Funko, or the OP, or whatever, I don't remember exactly, but Horrified is going to give you a different monster-based puzzle with more classic monsters as opposed to the Scooby-Doo theme. And then secondly, if you're looking for something that's very, very classic, very accessible, and can be brutally challenging and lots of difficulty modifications, Pandemic still won't let you down as a crisp, clean, delightful cooperative experience that has a lot of the same concepts here, but, you know, just with a classic the world's all ending and are all going to die theme pasted onto it. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.